Hey y'all, welcome to this week's show. First of all, I want to wish you a very Merry Christmas. As you know, I love Christmas, my favorite time of the year. So we have a tradition here on the Southern Appalachian Herbs podcast that I started in our very first year. And I tell the story of Christmas with the Hicks family on Beech Creek, North Carolina. Back then, it's quite a bit different now. It was 10 miles down a gravel road to get to Ray Hicks' old cabin that was built by his grandfather that was like stepping back in time well over 100 years. And if you ever wonder who this hillbilly is you listen to on this podcast every week, how did he learn about herbs? This is the story. I started my herbal apprenticeship with the Hicks family at about the age of 15. They taught me to use herbs as they had used them for hundreds of years. They taught me to wild harvest or wild craft herbs, which is how they made their living. After that, I went to various herbal schools and continued my herbal education and continue to do so to this day. One course I took was more than 270 hours of classwork just on its own, but I always go back to my roots as an herbalist. So I think what's growing around you, what's in your backyard. I think it's very important to learn to identify plants, grow what you can't find in the wild. Herb shops and ordering tinctures and capsules and such online is just fine, and a lot of people make their living that way, and I think they're doing wonderful work. But I think the next step, especially if you're concerned with what we call kitchen medicine, taking care of you and your family's needs in your house, and really the next step of as far as self-sufficiency and resiliency is learning to wild harvest or grow herbs and process them in your own kitchen. Dry your herbs, make your tinctures, make your decoctions, make your infused oils, and my books tell you how to do all of that. And that's what I began learning from the Hicks family, Ray and Rosie and Ted and Arvel and all that bunch. They were storytellers and musicians and woodsmen, traditional mountain people, and part Scottish and part Cherokee, and just real down to earth, salt of the earth, strongly religious, good, solid, wonderful people. And so every year I like to share this story with you, and it's a very meaningful story for me. I can't tell it again each year, and I'll tell you the God's honest truth. First time I recorded this, I broke down crying about 10 times. I mean, I had to go through and edit that recording to make it flow because there were just minutes and minutes of silence in between gaps. Came out pretty well. Now, I will apologize that in the first year of the show, the audio quality was not as good as it is today. I have edited the audio quality, enhanced it as best I can, but you may need to pop in your earbuds or a pair of speakers. I hope you will listen to this show with your kids, your grandkids, your family. I hope it's very important to remember that not very long ago, our nation, our culture, our world was very different, and families were more intact. Traditions were passed down that are being lost today. And it can be as simple as learning to play the guitar or a banjo, tell the old stories, learn to cook, or herbal medicine. If things progress the way they have been, we're not going to have this much longer. I watched a YouTube video yesterday, and the guy, I don't know how I stumbled across it. I guess it was a product I had looked up on online or something. So YouTube proposed that I watch his unboxing video of something he had ordered from Amazon, and it was several useful items, knives, and maybe a first aid kit and such as that. And he picks up a really great book, and I mean beautiful full color book on gardening and survival skills, and he just takes and throws it down and says nobody reads anymore. Why would you read when you can watch a YouTube video? I went livid. I mean, literally. It's really, that's willful ignorance. One thing you have to assume the person on YouTube is actually telling you the truth, that they actually know what they're talking about, that they actually have real life experience. But also, what happens when you're in a hurricane? What happens when you're in an ice storm? What happens when you have no internet or cell? That, just a little more than a year ago, we were a couple of months without power or cell. Had it not been for Elon Musk, nobody would have had communications whatsoever except for ham radio. People are so short-sighted and willfully stupid that it makes me very angry when I hear something like that. When I think about being up there with the Hicks family or with my grandparents or my great-grandparents on the farm, they had never heard of the internet. I mean, think about that. It wasn't in existence. They taught me to cook and take care of chickens and can and cure meat and garden. And then with the Hicks family, all about the herbal medicine and their various traditions and stories and music that was passed down from one generation to the next for thousands of years. Thousands of years. And in the blink of an eye, it can be gone. If you don't have that knowledge and use it and hone your skills, if you think you're just going to turn on the internet and pull up a YouTube video and learn everything you need in 2 minutes or 30 seconds, whatever, some stupid short TikTok video, and you're going to know how to survive or know how to care for yourself or your family, you're delusional. Any day now, a solar flare could just wipe out the grid. And you think your, AI companion's going to walk you through everything at that point? I sincerely hope I never encounter someone like that in real life, because it's not going to end well. Not going to end well at all. You don't take what has been valued by generations and throw it in the trash. But anyway, without further ado, I guess I should mention one thing. I'm really going to probably announce this more in the new year, but I did finally finish my book on how to play the mandolin. 30 years of experience into one book that I guess that guy would just take and throw in the trash because he thinks he can turn on a YouTube video and learn to absolutely master an instrument that took me 30 years to learn. Okay. I don't think many people are going to be paying to hear him play music. I've played several concerts. I played with several very famous musicians. Anyway, the book is now live on Amazon. It's called Mandolin Mysteries Solved. It's a really unique mandolin book. It's like nothing else on the market. It's not how to play, uh, bluegrass. It's not how to play a Bill Monroe solo or a Dave Grisman solo. It's a lot of practical experience, music theory, useful chords. I literally call it how to play any genre of music in any key, um, single note soloing or chord melody, rhythm, sight read music, improvise, all in one book. And I mean, it's a good 130 some page book, which is pretty unheard of for a musical instruction book. If your New Year's resolution is to learn to play the mandolin, check it out. It's on Amazon. Mandolin Mystery Solved by Judson Carroll. Um, if you, it may be a little too late to get it to somebody as a Christmas gift. I understand that, but if you know a mandolin player in your family, you could go ahead and order it and get it to them just after Christmas. Maybe Amazon Prime can get it to them fast enough, but I'm not going to guarantee that. So without further ado, let me just once again reiterate, I wish everyone the best. And I'm thankful for every one of you who listen to my podcast, who watch my videos, who read my books. I'm very grateful. Your gift to me every day is allowing me to make a living doing what I began as an apprentice with the Hicks family at the age of about 15. And that's a dream come true. Really. All right. Merry Christmas, y'all. Now, y'all, let's get on to what I said. A little something special for today's show, it being Christmas. I have told you before about the Hicks family of Beech Creek. Beech Creek was a community on the backside of Beech Mountain. Beech Mountain is a very popular resort area in the mountains of North Carolina, the Blue Ridge Mountains, Avery County. Um, Ski slopes. At one point, we actually had a theme park up there called the Land of Oz, where the entire Wizard of Oz was recreated on top of this mountain. And the fellow who opened it, Robbins, he hired many of the actors who were still alive from the Wizard of Oz movie. So as a kid, I remember Munchkins. I mean, some of the actual Munchkins. They'd have characters dressed up like the Cowardly Lion and the Scarecrow and Dorothy, and you'd walk in a house, and all of a sudden everything would start shaking, the lights was flashing, and you'd walk through a door and the house would be upside down because it went through the tornado, and the witch's legs were curled up under the house. I mean, it's just the greatest place for a kid. Anyway, it went bankrupt, stayed empty for years. There have been various plans of trying to bring it back that just never really worked. Now, huge resort developments have come in there, huge housing developments. And eventually it even went past the high end, big homes where all the Yankees lived on one side of the mountain. And unfortunately, the area we once knew as Beech Creek and Romanger, the backside of the mountain, are being developed and property taxes are going up. And the world I'm going to describe to you really isn't anymore. And that's the sad part. That's where I learned herbal medicine. When I was about 15, I began as an apprentice herbalist and storyteller and Appalachian folk musician with the Hicks family of Beech Mountain. And it's really special to me this time of year because every Christmas Eve was spent up there. So a few years ago, I wrote a little story that was sort of a remembrance of Christmas with the Hicks family. If y'all bear with me a little bit, it's probably going to be a little hard for me to read at some point. So, it seems the older I get, the more emotional I get around the holidays. So much of that world is gone. So many of the people I knew have passed. And these are people who are really family. And anyway, I put this story out and on the Grow Network and a few other places, and people just loved it. And this being the family from whom I learned herbs, I thought it'd be very appropriate to read it on this show. It's going to be a little hard for me at places because these people have all passed. And really, I mean, these are some of the most precious memories I have. Let me tell you, Ray was a character. Ray Hicks. I call this story Christmas Eve with Big Ray. Big Ray. Oh man, if only y'all could see the picture I'm looking at him right now. For several years, every Christmas Eve, my mother and I would make the long, winding drive up to Big Ray's house. Big Ray was Ray Hicks, famous storyteller, recipient of the National Heritage Award, subject of several books, and a Smithsonian exhibit. He was the teller of the Jack-Tales. He was a man out of time. He was a man who still lived 100 years in the past, minimum. But to us, Ray and his family were like our family. And going up to Ray's was as much of our Christmas tradition as presents were under the tree. Arvil Hicks, his name is Orville, but we all pronounce it Arvil. He's a famous storyteller in his own right. He introduced us to Ray and his wife Rosa, pronounced Rosie, and their son Ted. Arvil was a close family friend, and over the years we accompanied him to Merle Fest, to the National Storytelling Convention, Jonesboro. Met so many famous folks through him, and it was through Arvil I got to know Doc Watson, Mac Wiseman, Emmylou Harris, the great Guy Clark, who passed away, became a friend, and I miss him dearly as well. Frank Prophet, Frank Prophet Jr., his father made famous the song Hang Down Your Head, Tom Dooley. I mean, this was, you know, a real mountain tradition. And people came from all over the world to meet Ray and Doc. I mean, members of the Grateful Dead. I mean, Dave Brisman would show up frequently. It was a really unique time and place. But I mean, all the famous folks aside, Ray and Rosie were, and Ted and Arvil were just humble and honest and genuine. And they were family to us. The first time we met Ray and Rosie was at Cove Creek School. Ray had a sister who shared my mother's name. She had died early, so when Ray met my mother, he just repeated her name over and over. And from then on, I mean, we really were like family. We'd drive up from Fosco, a community near Boone, usually in the snow, and down what was then about 10 miles of unpaved road. We'd park on the hill above Ray's and holler out, hello. And, if y'all aren't from the mountains, you may not understand, but if you ever pull up to an old cabin in the middle of the nowhere, yell out hello before you start walking toward that door, or somebody may shoot you. That's just, the way things are. The first to greet us was always the dog. Ted had a little beagle, and Ray had a little black dog that had a shock of white hair right down the center of its head like a mohawk. It was actually longer than the rest of its fur, so it looked like a little white mohawk. And Ted would yell out and say, "You ones come on in." Well, Ray was always sitting in a chair in front of the wood stove, poking a stick into the fire. We'd say Merry Christmas, and Ray go, "Oh, is it Christmas? God snuck up on me this year." That's the way Ray spoke, okay? Ray had an accent that went back to his Scottish ancestors, very unique to that little area. And like I said, 100 years at a time. And Ray and Rosie and Ted and all the kids they had raised, they lived in a cabin that was built by Ray's father. Okay, the only electricity was one light from the ceiling. That was all the electricity. Okay, Ted had a little radio he kept upstairs to listen to the Grand Ole Opry, but other than that, this house was frozen in time. There was an outhouse out back. There was a second wood stove, a cook stove in the kitchen that Rosie cooked on. They didn't have a TV. They didn't have anything. They didn't get the newspaper. They had no idea what day it was. I mean, their way of life was timeless. Life was marked by plowing, planting, growing and harvesting, hunting, winter and spring, summer and fall. I mean, it was as old as the mountain. But Ted and Ray had welcomed us in, and Rosie come rushing out of the kitchen and hug my mother and greet us. And we'd all just kind of visit for a while and talk. And then my mother and Rosie would disappear to the kitchen and they'd talk women things.
We both learned volumes of herbal remedies from Rosie. Her hair was long. It went well past her waist and was jet black. I mean, well into old age because she was part Cherokee. Her aunt was actually the old witch woman. That's what they called her. Who local folks went to for cures and to have their fortunes told. So she was a wealth of Appalachian herbal information and folklore. And so was Ray. So was Ted. They made their living really gathering herbs. They gather herbs in the woods and sell them to the Wilcox store that was based out of Asheville but had an office there in Boone. And until Ray became a famous storyteller, that was basically their only income. And so Ted would show me the herbs. He taught me to identify ginseng, golden seal, and all that stuff. And Ray would tell me all kinds of cures. Ray was a character, y'all. I mean, you had to take everything he said with a little grain of salt. But Rosie was a true herbalist, and she spent years teaching me herbal medicine, and that's the foundation of why I'm sitting here today. Well, Rosie didn't really approve of drinking as a rule, okay, but it was Christmas. She didn't mind on Christmas, so we'd bring along some eggnog and brandy. And soon Rosie and my mother would come out of the kitchen with glasses full of brandied eggnog, and the celebration would just be full swing. I'd bring either my guitar or I'd play a six-string banjo that was tuned like the guitar that belonged to Ed. Arvel was usually there, and he'd join me on guitar, banjo, and Ray would play his harmonica. We would play all of our favorite tunes, all the songs by the Carter family and Jimmy Rogers, Bob Wills, Roy Acuff, Hank Williams, and Bill Monroe. You have to say Monroe if you're from the mountains. Ray's favorite song was an old mournful Roy Acuff song called Precious Jewel, and the folk song kind of a blues song called John Henry. Now, I guess everybody's heard John Henry. I knew about four or five versions of John Henry, so I just play them through as Ray sang and played the harmonica because the man had no rhythm whatsoever. He would sing in his own tuneless, rhythmless style. And let me tell you, if you could accompany Ray, playing with Willie Nelson would just be a piece of cake. Rosie would sing the old mountain folk ballads and the old shape note style. All those old beautiful songs about murders and dying lovers and all that. Uh, we'd sing a few hymns too, and that was always risky. Ray had a unique understanding of the Bible, unique understanding of Christian doctrine and theology, to put it mildly. As Arvel put it, he said a preacher came up here once and he and Ray got into it over the Bible. Ray ran that preacher off, and you never seen a preacher cuss so much. Hours would pass, and time would just stand still. We exchanged gifts, which always included Ray's favorite old-fashioned candy and a pouch of tobacco. Ray rolled his own cigarettes, and they were the worst-looking cigarettes you've ever seen. He'd roll one up and start telling a story like Wicked John and the Devil was one of his favorites. And he's talking, burning bits of tobacco would just fall all over the place. I mean, it were the sloppiest looking things. Arvel would usually tell a story, punctuating it with his deep chuckle. And then my turn would come around, and I'd do my best. I was kind of awkward with it. It was something I was learning. But Ray'd always cheer me on afterwards, encouraging me to take out the tradition. He'd say, "God, that was pretty good. You can almost pass as a Hicks, tall as you are. There are two kinds of Hicks. There's the crane neck Hicks and the bull neck Hicks. Arvel, he's a bull neck. God." Well, I stand about 6'4", and even in his late 70s, if not 80, Ray was a good 3 or 4 inches taller than me. So when we talked about crane necks and bull necks, he meant it. A very tall man. Ray and Rosie would invite us to stay the night, and we'd all get a little choked up when it was time for us to leave. Ted would walk us up the car, and it was always so cold up on Beach Mountain on Christmas Eve. The wind would blow the snow around. But the sky was, I don't even remember a time when there was a cloud in the sky on Christmas Eve. It was just clear as could be. And the moon would reflect on the snow, and it was so bright. I mean, it was never dark. You didn't need a flashlight or anything. You could see the city lights in Tennessee in the distance. And that's how clear the sky was. The silence and cold, it was just such a contrast to the warmth and the celebration inside the house. I've never experienced anything else like it, and I doubt I ever will. Ray passed away a few years ago. Been quite a while now, actually. We went to the funeral in Boone, and Ted and his older brother Leonard met us at the funeral home. I knew Ewans would come, Ted said. Ewans were always just like family, Leonard told us. My mother went to talk with Rosie, and I sat with Ted and Leonard reminiscing. I always have a knack for mimicry. I often end up imitating people's voices without even being aware of it. I can sit there talking with someone and somehow just adopt their accent, which y'all may find surprising, given as thick as my southern accent is. But anyway, Ted said Daddy would appreciate Ewan's coming, and so without even thinking, I replied, I know exactly what he'd say. He'd say, "Go, it's Becky and her boy, go." Ted and Leonard, they both laughed and remarked how I sounded just like. Well, we all got a little choked up about then and stepped outside. I remember Ted said, I never did like crowds of people. I guess I'm just too used to being up on the mountain. Someone's rooster had gotten loose. It was strutting around the parking lot of the funeral home. Just a little bantam rooster. And that's a pretty odd sight in the center of bustling Boone. Boone's become a very modern town in the past decade or two. But at Ray Hicks' funeral, it didn't seem out of place at all. The New York Times and National Public Radio ran obituaries on Ray. Somehow, though, that colorful, strutting, crowing rooster seemed a more appropriate tribute. We just kind of talked about the roosters and our throats loosened up. So this Christmas Eve, I'll remember those nights at Ray's. I reckon I always will. If y'all have children or grandchildren, here's a gift idea for Christmas. Buy them a recording of Ray or Arvel Hicks telling stories. Or buy a copy of the Jack Tales collected by Richard Chase and learn to tell the stories. Storytelling is such a wonderful tradition. And while I can guarantee there'll never be another Ray, or Arvel, or Rosie or Ted, the Jack Tale tradition can live on through generations to come. So y'all, I want to wish you a Merry Christmas. I hope you get to spend it with people you love. The one thing Christmas is not about is stuff. Christmas is about family and memories and a baby born over 2,000 years ago who makes us all family. Merry Christmas, y'all.